The 10,120th meeting of the Security Council is called to order. The provisional agenda for this meeting. The provisional agenda for this meeting is Non-Proliferation Security Council Committee established pursuant to Resolution 1737 in the year 2006. The representative of the Russian Federation has asked for the floor. I give them the floor.
Mr. President, a procedural issue. We're deeply disappointed by the attempt of our American colleagues to crudely abuse their powers as the President of the Security Council and to hold a meeting dedicated to the activities of the so-called 1737 Committee. The position of the Russian Federation and that of a number of other states regarding assertions about a supposed reactivation of the Security Council's anti-Iranian resolutions, including Resolution 1737, are well known to Security Council members as well as the entire international community. The mechanism for their restoration, as per Resolution 2231, wasn't activated. Western states' assertions to the contrary do not stand up to any criticism. The European Troika, participating in the JCPOA, and by the way, the US itself withdrew from the JCPOA in 2018, the European Troika had no right to activate that mechanism. The Russian Federation, together with our Chinese and Iranian colleagues, repeatedly provided information to delegations about the legal rationale, including detailed clarification of the reasons why the UK, France, and Germany could not use the snapback. So, let us issue a reminder for the particularly forgetful. The anti-Iranian resolutions of the Security Council lost their force in 2015 when Resolution 2231 was adopted. Resolution 2231 itself expired, as per the resolution itself, on the 18th of October 2025. The Security Council has not taken any other decisions on this issue. Thus, Resolution 1737 long ago lost its force and relevance. So let's not parrot assertions about supposedly the snapback having been invoked. Against this backdrop, there are no grounds for a briefing to be held by this committee at the Security Council. The attempts by the US and their allies to convince us of the contrary are a flagrant violation of Security Council procedures and decisions taken by the Council. This is exactly why Russia, together with China, was previously compelled to block the adoption of the Programme of Work of the Security Council for March 2026, as well as to speak out against an agreement on the 1737 Committee report. Similarly, we cannot agree to today's agenda either, the agenda put forward by the US presidency. We'd like to draw your attention to the fact that the non-proliferation item was withdrawn from the Security Council agenda when Resolution 2231 expired. We want to put the issue of the holding of this meeting to a procedural vote. We call on conscientious and reasonable colleagues to also vote against and not to allow for the Security Council to be used to lend legitimacy to legal and procedural arbitrariness. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Russia for the statement. The representative of the United Kingdom has asked to make a statement. I give them the floor.
Thank you, President. We fully reject the points made by the Russian Federation. Today's meeting is fully in line with the decisions and procedure of this Council. The United Kingdom, alongside France and Germany, triggered the snapback mechanism procedure in full accordance with Security Council Resolution 2231. We did so because of Iran's significant non-performance of its commitments under the JCPOA. As Russia and China know, the snapback process completed on 28 September 2025 and, as a result, 6 UN Security Council resolutions and UN sanctions have come back into force. We particularly recall Resolution 1737 requires the committee to report at least every 90 days to the Security Council on its work. The Council should not be prevented from discussing these important matters at hand. So, President, we urge that we continue with today's meeting, and the UK will therefore vote in favour of the adoption of the agenda. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom for the statement. The representative of France has asked to make a statement. I give them the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I wish to briefly react to what's been said by the permanent representative of the Russian Federation. I wish to begin by aligning myself word for word with what's just been said by the representative of the United Kingdom. I wish to share the following facts. The Security Council resolutions on the Iranian nuclear program were restored last September pursuant to the procedure for the restoration of sanctions, the so-called snapback mechanism. That procedure was conducted in accordance with paragraphs 11 and 12 of Resolution 2231. Among the resolutions restored, there was Resolution 1737 that establishes the Sanctions Committee and tasks it with working under Council oversight. There is no doubt, no legal doubt surrounding that point. The restoration of these resolutions and the restoration of the 1737 Committee are objective realities rooted in compliance with Resolution 2231. Moreover, the United Nations Secretariat has taken note of these realities in its official communications to the Council and to our organization in general. The IAEA has done so too. The latter produced reports on the implementation by Iran of nuclear obligations provided for in resolutions restored last September. It is now incumbent upon all states to implement these resolutions in accordance with Article 25 of the United Nations Charter. States from manifold regional groups have incidentally begun to once more apply these sanctions by conveying to the committee requests and notifications of exemptions. Law is important. The resolutions were legally restored. It is therefore entirely justified for the Security Council to meet today to discuss the work of the committee, even if, and we regret this fact, 2 members did object to the adoption of the quarterly report of that committee. Thank you.
I thank the representative of France for the statement. The representative of China has asked to make a statement. I give them the floor.
Thank you, President. China supports the procedural motion put forward by Russia and calls on all members to vote against the convening of this meeting. China has repeatedly pointed out that the E3's activation of the snapback mechanism is procedurally and legally flawed. Resolution 2231 expired on October 18th of last year, and the Security Council has therefore concluded its consideration of the Iranian nuclear issue against the backdrop of renewed hostilities in the Middle East and the increasingly complex and grave situation surrounding the Iranian nuclear issue. The President's insistence on convening this meeting will only intensify divisions and confrontation among parties, undermine the prospect for a political settlement of the Iranian nuclear issue. China expresses its grave concern in this regard. China calls on Council members to focus on safeguarding peace and stability in the Middle East, faithfully implement the arrangements related to termination day of Resolution 2231, uphold the authority of the Council and the credibility of multilateral diplomacy, and create conditions for the Iranian nuclear issue to return to the track of political and diplomatic settlement. Thank you, President.
I thank the representative of China for the statement. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as the representative of the United States. The United States strongly rejects the assertions made by the representatives of Russia and China and fully supports the statements that have been made by the representatives of the United Kingdom and France in support of moving forward with this meeting. Resolution 1737 and subsequent resolutions mandate quarterly reports from the 1737 Committee to the Council. Today, the President of this Council, as acting chair of the 1737 Committee, should be presenting the committee's 90-day report. We are disappointed that the obstruction from 2 Council members blocked the delivery of this mandated report to the Council, despite it being an entirely factual description of the committee's activities during the reporting period. It is necessary to nevertheless continue to move forward with this meeting, which provides an important opportunity to discuss implementation of the sanctions measures reinstated by this council. I would also note that on the first day of the U.S. presidency, all council members, except 2, confirmed their support for holding this mandated meeting. I urge everyone to join us in voting yes to adopt the agenda, hold this meeting, and allow the council to proceed with its work. I now resume my function as president of the council. As president, we believe it necessary to move forward with this meeting. In view of the request and the comments made by members of the Security Council, I intend to put the provisional agenda to the vote. Accordingly, I shall put it to the vote now. Will those in favor of the adoption of the provisional agenda, non-proliferation, please raise their hand? Those against? Abstentions? The result of the voting is as follows: 11 votes in favor, 2 votes against, 2 abstentions. The provisional agenda has been adopted. The Security Council will now begin its consideration of item 2 of the agenda. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as representative of the United States. Colleagues, today was meant to be a straightforward mandated meeting of the 1737 Committee. But unfortunately, our Russian and Chinese colleagues continue to block this committee's important work as part of their collaboration with the Iranian regime. On March 6th, the Russian and Chinese delegations officially blocked and objected to the 90-day report of the 1737 Committee mandated in Resolution 1737. By doing this, Russia and China have made clear that the 1737 Committee exists and is functional. It is a simple fact that on September 19th of last year, the Council decisively voted against a resolution introduced pursuant to Resolution 2231 to continue sanctions relief for Iran, thereby reinstating 6 previously suspended UN Security Council resolutions relating to Iran to include the resolution that established the committee. So what this means in plain language is that all member states of the United Nations should be implementing an arms embargo against Iran, banning the transfer and trade of missile technology, and freezing relevant financial assets in line with the robust UN sanctions that had been in place before 2015 and have now been snapped back into place. The UN provisions to be reimposed are not arbitrary, but instead narrowly scoped to address the threat posed by Iran's nuclear, missile, and conventional arms programs and Iran's ongoing support for terrorism. Iran had ample opportunity to prevent this outcome. France, the United Kingdom, and Germany offered to extend the so-called snapback mechanism if Iran were to account for its highly enriched uranium stockpile, if Iran would comply with IAEA obligations that were already mandatory under the NPT, and if Iran would resume direct diplomacy with the United States. All of those options were put on the table in good faith for Iran, and all of them were rejected. In that vein, Iran has remained defiant. Just last week, the IAEA Director General's report reiterated that Iran is the only state in the world without nuclear weapons to have produced and accumulated uranium enriched up to 60%. It also confirmed, this is the IAEA Director General's report, that for over 8 months now, Iran has refused to provide the IAEA with updated information on or access to this highly enriched uranium stockpile or other previously declared low enriched uranium stocks at facilities affected by military strikes in June 2025. The Director General himself describes this as, quote, a matter of non-proliferation concern and of compliance with the NPT Safeguards Agreement, end quote. Pursuant to the September 19th vote and this Council's binding resolutions, we meet today with a committee that is operational. The committee has received exemption requests. The requests have been approved by this operational committee. The Secretariat has called for applications to serve on the panel of experts. That selection process is now underway. We urge Council members to press our Russian and Chinese colleagues to allow the Council to appoint a committee chair. This obstructionism thus far on the matter of a 1737 committee chair is predicated on a bad faith and baseless reinterpretation of events. The truth of the matter is that Russia and China do not want a functional committee, not out of some type of legal objection, but because they want to protect their partner Iran and can continue to maintain defense cooperation that is now once again prohibited. Both countries have sustained military trade ties. In 2022, Russia began by buying Iranian drones in violation of Resolution 2231, which imposed time-bound restrictions on Iran's nuclear and conventional arms activity. Russia has also acquired close-range ballistic missiles from Iran and provided Iran with attack helicopters earlier this year in violation of Resolution 1929, which imposed even more sanctions against the regime's nuclear program. All of this while Iran continues to evade sanctions, fire ballistic missiles and drones at civilians in the region, and attack civilian shipping in the Gulf, and wreak havoc in the Strait of Hormuz. So, colleagues, let's end. Enough of the performative hand-wringing supposedly over process. The reality is Russia and China do not want this committee because it will continue to protect their partner, Iran. In light of that, the United States will continue to work to ensure Iran can no longer hold the world hostage with its missile, drone, and certainly not a nuclear program. Let me close by reminding the Council the United States pursued a diplomatic solution in good faith prior to the initiation of snapback and after. I outlined for you the activities of the United Kingdom, of France, and of Germany along those same lines. Each time we articulated clear timeframes for meaningful dialogue that could address the outstanding issues of concern to the international community, including the behaviors prohibited under the reinstated Security Council resolutions. Time and again, Iran chose not to take those opportunities. I thank you. I will resume my function as President of the Council. I now give the floor to those Council members who wish to make statements. I give the floor to the representative of the United Kingdom.
Thank you, President. This year, we will mark 20 years since the Council adopted Resolution 1737. 20 years during which Iran's nuclear and missile programs have been amongst the most pressing threats to international peace and security. The UK has been clear all that time that we favoured negotiation and diplomacy. But we have repeatedly seen Iran not act in good faith to address international concerns. So I want to start by expressing solidarity with our partners in the Gulf and the wider region who took no part in the military action launched on 28 February, but who have been the target of waves of repeated and unprovoked Iranian missile and drone attacks over the last week. We strongly condemn these attacks. They are endangering civilians, destabilizing the region, and threatening the global economy. They must stop. We pay tribute to the swift actions taken by those partners to protect civilians, including UK nationals. Their efforts have saved lives, and we have acted to defend the Gulf and will continue to stand by the region in the face of this threat. This is exactly why the UK co-sponsored alongside 135 countries and voted for Resolution 2817 yesterday. Today's crisis underlines the gravity of Iran's approach to the nuclear and missile files. Our position is clear. We will not overlook actions that undermine international security or the global non-proliferation regime. Iran's reckless and repeated use of ballistic missiles, including against its neighbours without provocation, has intensified regional insecurity and heightened the risk to civilians. Our concerns about its nuclear program remain serious and long-standing. Iran has persistently failed to fulfill its safeguard obligations and fully cooperate with the IAEA. There is no credible civilian justification for over 400 kilograms of high-enriched uranium. This is unacceptable and erodes confidence in the peaceful nature of its activities. It was this sustained nuclear escalation that led the E3 to trigger the snapback mechanism last year. We underline the importance of all UN member states, including Iran, implementing the reinstated sanctions fully and without exception. Resolution 1737 imposes sanctions banning nuclear technology and materials, imposes asset freezes on key individuals and entities linked to Iran's enrichment program, and establishes a sanctions committee. These restrictions play a critical role in curbing Iran's destabilizing actions by narrowing its access to the capabilities that sustain its missile program, and by constraining Iran's nuclear proliferation activities. Effective global compliance is essential for the 1737 Committee to carry out its mandate. We encourage rigorous monitoring and reporting and call for the swift appointment of a chair. The panel of experts must be established without delay to independently investigate alleged violations of sanctions. We call on those member states that have sought to evade or undermine the UN sanctions reinstated under the snapback mechanism to cease doing so immediately. This approach only emboldens Iran. No member state should, directly or indirectly, undertake or facilitate any action that breaches or circumvents sanctions, and all should press Iran to halt its destabilizing behavior. All member states have a clear responsibility to fulfill their UN obligations in full, particularly on an issue as grave and consequential as this. President, the United Kingdom remains unwavering in its commitment to finding a lasting and sustainable solution that ensures Iran never acquires a nuclear weapon. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Mr. President, we are disappointed by the fact that the majority of Council members didn't manage to muster up the courage and wisdom to speak out against this flagrant violation of decisions previously taken by the Council. Responsibility for the lawlessness that's being unleashed at the Council falls fully and squarely on the shoulders of the US presidency, as well as on the shoulders of delegations supporting it or condoning its single-handed decisions, the decisions of the US. We regret the fact that some colleagues are continuing to follow Washington's lead, which already back in 2018 thwarted the regular implementation of the JCPOA by illegally and unilaterally withdrawing from the nuclear deal and continuing to do everything possible to nullify any prospects of reaching a diplomatic agreement on Iran's nuclear program. The position of the Russian Federation, in light of assertions about supposed activation of the mechanism for reinstating Security Council resolutions on Iran, anti-Iran, is unchanged, principled, and consistent. As I noted already today, the UK, France, and Germany could not have activated this instrument. Now, I won't delve into the details. Our position is spelt out in detail in many letters addressed to the Security Council and the General Assembly. All colleagues can read those. I will simply remind you of the main points. First, these countries, strip themselves of the right to invoke the snapback by their chronic violations of the JCPOA and Resolution 2231. I am referring to the inability of the European Troika to fulfill their obligations to ensure economic benefits for Iran stemming from the lifting of EU sanctions which were in force up until 2015. I'm also referring to their illegal decision to resume unilateral sanctions pressure after Transition Day, the JCPOA Transition Day, that is 18th of October 2023. International law is fairly clear-cut on this issue. A party that does not comply its obligations under any agreement or treaty cannot invoke the instruments contained therein in their own interests. This is what the so-called clean hands doctrine speaks to, as does the Pacta sunt servanda principles, not to mention advisory opinions issued by the International Court of Justice. Second, the JCPOA, which is an inextricable part of Resolution 2231, of which the JCPOA is a part, clearly sets out the procedure for resolving any contradictions when implementing said agreement. Before the issue of non-compliance with the JCPOA can be referred to the Security Council for consideration. Now, this issue must be considered in detail by the Dispute Resolution Mechanism in Vienna, that is the DRM. Paragraphs 36 and 37 of the JCPOA set forth a specific algorithm, a formula for conducting this process. So no matter how much the UK, France, and Germany tried to convince us that they supposedly used the dispute resolution mechanism all the way back in 2020, the fact of the matter remains. This mechanism was not just not exhausted, it wasn't even launched due to serious procedural gaps which were never resolved. Thus, the so-called notification the Europeans sent regarding the triggering of the snapback on the 28th of August 2025 sent to the Security Council was legally null and void. For that reason, the outcome of the 19th of September vote on the draft resolution aimed at maintaining the regime, lifting anti-Iranian Security Council resolutions, couldn't have had any legal nor procedural ramifications. In a nutshell, there was no snapback. UN Security Council Resolution 2231 lost its force on the 18th of October 2025. Against this backdrop, Western attempts to justify their groundless assertions using the UN Secretariat position do not stand up to criticism either. UN colleagues did take steps, specifically informing member states about the resumption of resolutions and recreating the website of Security Council Committee 1737 and its sanctions list. Well, these steps are simply illegal actions taken by the Secretariat in violation of Security Council Resolution 2231, as well as Article 100 of the UN Charter, which prohibits the Security Council and organization staff from receiving instructions from any government. Under such conditions, the Russian Federation sees no rationale for getting Security Council Committee 1737 back up and running, not to mention discussing its functioning at Security Council meetings. We deeply regret that Western delegations are insisting on trying to legalize their claims. This is having a negative impact on the work of the entire Security Council. The Europeans and their allies are simply holding hostage the issue of seat distribution in Security Council subsidiary bodies, demanding that it be linked with the appointment of the chair of the illegitimate 1737 committee. We'd like to underscore yet again, any such attempts are doomed to fail. We urge our Western colleagues to stop such groundless and unconstructive political paradigms, stop pursuing them, because they are dealing a serious blow to the effectiveness of our joint work. We cannot but remind you that the Russian Federation, together with China, has done everything within its power to prevent such a difficult, very difficult legal and procedural situation from coming to pass. At the height of disagreements over the snapback, we put forward a depoliticized and balanced draft resolution on a technical rollover of Resolution 2231 for a period of 6 months. If that document had been adopted, it would have helped us to freeze the situation for a little longer, giving the settlement of disagreements on the Iranian nuclear program without creating such a crisis at the Security Council, giving this opportunity a chance. Well, Western states and other delegations supporting them did not seize that opportunity. Subsequent events, especially those that we've had to bear witness to over the last week and a half, clearly demonstrate that diplomatic settlement was not part of the plan for the US and their allies from the very beginning. They knowingly raised the stakes. They whipped up hysteria surrounding supposed plans Iran had to get a nuclear weapon. They were never corroborated by IAEA reports, in contrast to what the US representative asserted today. This was done in order to undertake yet another military venture against Tehran and to ensure greater escalation of the situation in the Middle East and beyond. Against this backdrop, we'd like to remind you that the Russian Federation categorically condemns the act of military aggression against Iran by the US and Israel in violation of the UN Charter and the basic norms of international law. Such actions cannot be justified in any way, shape, or form. And the groundless and divorced from reality insinuations surrounding the Iranian program aimed at peaceful development of the atom cannot serve as rationale either. Linked to today's meeting, we cannot but underscore that while previously US colleagues had no legal grounds for raising the issue of resuming the anti-Iranian resolutions of the Security Council and the restoration of the 1737 committee, previously it had no legal rationale, now it doesn't even have any moral rationale. Our country will continue to do everything within its power to counter such attempts. Will also facilitate all initiatives aimed at reverting the situation surrounding Iran to the realm of political and diplomatic settlement. For that reason, on the 7th of March, my delegation disseminated among council members a draft resolution calling an immediate cessation of military hostilities by all parties. Our document was balanced, it was unbiased, and depoliticized. As we said yesterday during the vote, the Russian text was focused on condemning any strikes on civilians and civilian infrastructure, as well as the need to ensure security for all states in the Middle East and beyond. The text also urged all parties involved to immediately go back to the negotiating table. We believe that it is such initiatives, rather than attempts to use the Security Council to promote politicized and illegal paradigms, it is such initiatives that will allow the Security Council to fulfill its direct responsibility to maintain international peace and security. We regret that a number of council members didn't find the strength to support the Russian draft. I thank you.
I thank the representative for his statement. I give the floor to the representative of China.
Thank you, President. China has just stated its position regarding the 1737 committee and its opposition to the convening of this meeting. China doesn't intend to comment on the committee's work. However, as a council member, China wishes to emphasize the following on the current situation of the Iranian nuclear issue and its path forward. First, The use of force is not the right way to resolve international disputes. Iran's sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity must be respected. The United States and Israel must immediately stop their military operations, refrain from attacking Iranian nuclear facilities under IAEA safeguards, avoid further escalation of the tension, and prevent the conflict from spreading across the entire Middle East region. All parties should maintain calm and restraint, fulfill their obligations under international law, and effectively safeguard the safety of civilians and civilian infrastructure. The international community should send a clear and unequivocal message opposing the regression of the world to the law of the jungle. Second, the Iranian nuclear issue must ultimately return to the track of a political and diplomatic settlement. I want to emphasize that it was precisely the United States that unilaterally withdrew from JCPOA, which triggered the Iranian nuclear crisis. It was also the United States that, in total disregard of its own credibility, on 2 occasions joined Israel and resorted to blatant use of force against Iran during the negotiation process, which rendered the diplomatic efforts futile. The United States, as the instigator of the Iranian nuclear crisis, its conduct violates the international law and the purposes and principles of the UN Charter. China strongly opposes to such conduct. China strongly condemns such conduct. We urge the U.S. to change its course of action immediately and return to the course of diplomatic negotiations and clearly undertake not to use of force and engage with Iran on negotiations and reach a solution that meets the expectations of the international community. The relevant European countries should cease to fan the flames. They should play a constructive role in easing tensions. China commends the regional countries and the IAEA for their mediation efforts and support their continued assistance in resuming negotiations to promote a peaceful solution to the Iranian nuclear issue. Third, fairness and justice must be upheld, and Iran's right as a state party to the NPT to peaceful uses of nuclear energy must be safeguarded. Iran has repeatedly affirmed that it doesn't seek to develop nuclear weapons. Even after its nuclear facilities were attacked, it continued to cooperate with the IAEA and engaged in a constructive manner in multiple rounds of professional and pragmatic talks with the United States. Iran's sincerity should be taken seriously. IAEA reports and its Director General have both stated that there is no evidence indicating that Iran plans to manufacture nuclear weapons. The experience with the JCPOA demonstrates that comprehensive and stringent safeguards applied to Iran can fully ensure the peaceful nature of its nuclear program. Fourth, the starting point for Council actions should be to ease tensions and to safeguard lasting peace and stability in the Middle East. Such actions shouldn't be biased, nor should they become tools for sanctions and pressure to serve the political agendas of individual countries. The Council should help the parties build trust, bridge differences, and create favorable conditions for resuming negotiations, ensuring that dialogue proceeds smoothly and effectively in an environment free from the threat of force. A certain country should stop manipulating the Council for political purposes. Despite divisions among Council members, pushing for the reimposition of sanctions will only deepen confrontation and undermine prospects for a political settlement. President, the proper settlement of the Iranian nuclear issue bears on the authority and effectiveness of the global non-proliferation regime and is crucial to peace and stability in the Middle East. As a permanent member of the Council and a JCPOA participant, China will continue to uphold an objective and impartial position, enhance communication and coordination with all parties, build consensus, uphold justice, and play a constructive role in restoring peace to the Middle East and advancing the political solution to the Iranian nuclear issue. I thank you, President.
I thank the representative of China for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of Panama.
Gracias.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the current context of tensions in the Middle East, the situation regarding Iran's nuclear program remains a matter that we must increasingly pay urgent attention to as an international community. The Republic of Panama remains of the firm belief that non-proliferation of weapons of mass destruction stands as a priority for international security and global stability. With this in mind, we reiterate that the technical, appropriate, and uninterrupted work of this committee, as well as that of other subsidiary bodies, is of pivotal importance to guarantee the proper implementation of the measures agreed upon respectively and to facilitate dialogue, the exchange of information and cooperation between states as a complement to the work of verification done by the International Atomic Energy Agency. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Panama for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of Greece.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the issue of reinstating the 1737 committee, we would like to make clear that we consider this valid and legitimate. All subsequent actions towards restarting the work of the committee have our full support. This follows 2 votes in September where the Council decided on this matter, including on the snapback mechanism on the 19th of September. Linked to this issue is the broader question of Iran's nuclear program. We have consistently expressed our strong concern regarding Iran's nuclear program and that Iran must never acquire a nuclear weapon. In this regard, full cooperation with the IAEA and strict adherence to international obligations are needed, along with a strong, permanent, and verifiable oversight on Iran's nuclear program. Cooperation grounded in verification and transparency remains the only way forward. Continuing enrichment in unreasonably high levels with no credible civilian justification, as well as refusing inspection by the IAEA, must be immediately addressed by Iran in order to restore confidence. In this context, Greece yet again reiterates its unwavering commitment to the nuclear non-proliferation regime with the IAEA and the NPT as its essential institutional pillars. Safeguarding it and reinforcing it remains vital for regional and global stability and for the maintenance of international peace and security. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Greece for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of Bahrain.
شكرا سيد.
Thank you, Mr. President. Allow me to thank the U.S. delegation for presiding over the Security Council this month, and we thank you for holding this meeting on the briefing of the 1737 committee and the snapback mechanism. Mr. President, Discussing this report today comes at a very critical point following a series of missile attacks and ballistic missiles launched by the Islamic Republic of Iran against my country and other GCC countries as well as Jordan. These dangerous developments represent an unprecedented escalation that threatens regional security and international stability. We would like to note to recall Resolution 2817, which was adopted by the Security Council yesterday based on a draft resolution tabled by Bahrain on behalf of the GCC countries and the Kingdom of Jordan. This resolution is based on developments and was negotiated in a transparent manner. It addressed the situation in a very, very transparent manner. In this resolution, the international community condemned the Iranian attacks by ballistic missiles and drones against GCC countries, and it called for halting them immediately and for respecting the sovereignty and territorial integrity of states. Targeting civilians and So targeting civilians is a blatant violation of international humanitarian law. It is a dangerous escalation that threatens civilian life, national economy, and the safety of communities. Whoever justifies the targeting of civilian infrastructure and the killing of civilians are not defending a cause. They are falsifying the truth. They are finding justifications for the aggression. This is a deep humanitarian and humanitarian flaw. The international community condemned these dangerous attacks. There were very clear positions from a number of states and international organizations condemning this aggressive behavior. This proves that the attacks by the missiles cannot lead to any legitimacy or friendship. Mr. President, the 1737 Committee was established by the Security Council to compel Iran to comply with its relevant international commitments. However, the situation on the ground shows that Iran continues with its aggressive behavior, and this directly threatens the security of the region and its stability as well as the safety of its people. We stress that the committee has to work. This is an essential mechanism to ensure that Iran abides by its international commitments to promote the effectiveness of the UN sanctions. This can help in curbing activities that threaten the safety and stability of the region. Mr. President, in conclusion, we call upon the Security Council to shoulder its responsibility in full in fighting these dangerous violations and taking a firm position against these hostilities to ensure regional and international security and stability. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Bahrain for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of Latvia.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we're facing the ongoing hostilities in the wider Middle East, Iran's nuclear program and non-compliance with its international obligations are at the very center. And we express our regret that this is the first time we're discussing the 1737 committee since the imposition of Council sanctions on Iran in September of last year, despite the fact that we have been legally mandated to do so every 90 days. We also express our regret that an agreement was not reached on the 90-day report of the 1737 committee. The sanctions against Iran have been reimposed and remain in force. They reflect binding international law, and all UN member states, including the members of the Security Council, are obliged to respect and implement them. These sanctions were imposed due to continued and systematic failure of Iran to live up to its international obligations, most notably under the JCPOA and the NPT, including its non-negotiable legal obligations under the Comprehensive Safeguards Agreements. So let us be clear, the production of highly enriched uranium up to 60%, as previously reported by IAEA inspectors, cannot be reconciled with any peaceful purpose. As long as Iran chooses to pursue its destabilizing nuclear program, to refrain from granting unhindered access to IAEA inspectors to all relevant sites, and not return to meaningful negotiations, the sanctions will remain in place. As we have seen, the 1737 committee has also been reestablished and is exercising its mandate, despite the continued delay in the appointment of chairs of the Security Council subsidiary bodies for 2026. This also is reflected in its continued work on the relevant exemption procedures. Mr. President, it is deeply regrettable that some Council members continue to dispute reality and legal facts. It is even more regrettable that in order to do so, the work of all Security Council subsidiary bodies is being paralyzed. This disruptive approach is the latest in a series of attempts to create a fictional parallel legal narrative aimed at challenging the authority of this body and its decisions. This is unacceptable, and it undermines not only this committee and the Council, but also international legal principles more broadly. Let me remind that Iran has supplied Russia with drones and missiles for Russia's aggression in Ukraine, used to attack civilian targets in violation of the Council Resolution 2231. And we also condemn Iran's provoked attacks with these same weapons against its neighbors and reiterate our solidarity with the states of the Gulf Cooperation Council, Jordan, and other affected countries. And we call for an immediate cessation of these attacks and urgent de-escalation. Mr. President, finally, allow me to reaffirm our readiness to engage constructively in further work of the 1737 Sanctions Committee and express our hope that the subsidiary bodies will resume their full operation as soon as possible, and that we will also support all efforts to ensure that Iran never acquires a nuclear weapon. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Latvia for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of Denmark.
Thank you, Mr. President, for convening this meeting. We regret that the 1737 Committee was unable to agree on the 90-day report due to the unwillingness of some Council members to recognize the decision that the Council took in September last year on the snapback mechanism. Let me begin by expressing Denmark's deep concern with the continued escalation of the situation in the Middle East. We are witnessing a further destabilization of the already volatile and tense situation with grave consequences for the people across the region and for international peace and security. We are deeply concerned about reports of increasing civilian casualties and displacements. We call for maximum restraint and respect for international law, including international humanitarian law. We call for diplomatic efforts to reduce tensions and for negotiations to be resumed in good faith. Furthermore, Denmark strongly condemns Iran's continued attacks on countries in the region and beyond. These attacks must stop. We express our full solidarity with all the countries concerned. This is also why Denmark co-sponsored and voted in favor of the resolution presented by Bahrain on behalf of the GCC and Jordan yesterday. We were pleased that Resolution 2817 was adopted. Madam President, when it comes to Iran's nuclear aspirations, Denmark has always been clear. Iran must never be allowed to develop or acquire a nuclear weapon. As we watch the current escalations unfold, we are reminded why this is so important. We're deeply concerned by Iran curtailing cooperation with the IAEA, which has lost continuity of knowledge and for almost 9 months has been unable to provide information on the status or whereabouts of the enriched uranium stockpiles in Iran. As the IAEA has stated, this is a matter of proliferation concern and of compliance with Iran's NPT Safeguards Agreement. The IAEA's latest report, which predates the current escalation in the region, confirmed that Iran continued to deny the agency access to a number of nuclear facilities. This is not in line with Iran's NPT legally binding safeguard obligations and is deeply alarming. We see no credible civilian justification, neither for accumulating nor for hiding highly enriched uranium stockpiles. Last year, the E3 legitimately activated a snapback mechanism, and following the vote in the Security Council, all sanctions against Iran were reimposed. We call on Iran and all UN member states to fully comply with the 6 reinstated Security Council resolutions. Madam President, in closing, Denmark has and will continue to engage constructively in the work of the 1737 Committee. We regret that the Council has not yet agreed on a chair for the committee, which is holding hostage the full operation of all subsidiary organs. This significantly hampers the ability of this Council to execute its mandate. We stand ready to engage with all Council members to reach a solution as soon as possible. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Denmark. I now give the floor to the representative of Colombia.
Thank you, Madam President. Today, it is more important and necessary than ever before that this Council is able to meet in plenary and operate smoothly, guaranteeing the continuation of its specialized technical support. Concerns surrounding the lack of compliance and cooperation on the part of Iran with the IAEA come in addition to an environment of active conflict, which is spiking risks for global and regional security. And both these factors make it all the more necessary for the committee to fully perform its duties in their entirety. Having independent technical information and reliable monitoring mechanisms contributes to reducing risks of escalation and to avoiding erroneous interpretations regarding the situation on the ground, interpretations which could worsen the very same. Madam President, Colombia wishes to underscore the critical importance of the work of the IAEA and of its effective presence in these sites subject to its monitoring and verification. With this in mind, my country encourages Iran to guarantee the conditions necessary for the safe and timely access of the IAEA to facilities in order to resolve outstanding issues, safeguards issues, that is, pursuant to the NPT, and in order to restore full traceability and verification. For Colombia, it is also vital to ensure that without delay we have a fully operational panel of experts. That will make it possible to rigorously document implementation, detect patterns of sanctions evasion, and issue evidence-based recommendations. We hope that the selection process currently underway will prompt progress towards the appointment of the panel in a timely fashion and to guarantee the technical support that this committee requires. Moreover, we wish to emphasize that Council sanctions are not an end in themselves, nor a punitive instrument. Rather, they are measures created to prevent, deter, and correct behavior which threaten peace. They are tools to support political solutions and to promote non-proliferation. Sanctions function best when they are part of a strategy which combines diplomacy and verification. Colombia will participate actively in the committee's deliberations with a constructive spirit and a results-orientated focus. We will continue to defend diplomatic channels, restraint, and the search for political solutions which make it possible to heed concerns around Iran's nuclear and ballistic program, as well as to mitigate tensions and open the way to the de-escalation of the conflict currently raging. In light of the above, my country appeals for restraint and de-escalation. We also appeal for a return to diplomacy as the only sustainable path towards avoiding greater tension and rebuilding trust. Madam President, we reaffirm our conviction that multilateralism, international cooperation, and objective technical verification remain the best chance we have of reducing risk, bolstering collective security, and contributing to stability, not only in Iran, but in the region as a whole. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Colombia. I now give the floor to the representative of France.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam President. I wish to thank the Presidency for organizing this meeting on Committee 1737. The war into which the Middle East has been plunged must cease now. We stand in solidarity with the victims of these indiscriminate strikes, and we want a solution that respects international law and which guarantees lasting peace. Iran bears overwhelming responsibility for the catastrophic situation which is besetting both the region and the world. For years, Iran has played a destabilizing role for international peace and security. Iran continues nuclear activities which violate its international obligations. For more than a year, the country has suspended almost all cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency. The agency is no longer in a position to guarantee the exclusively peaceful nature of the Iranian nuclear program. Secrecy cloaks the situation surrounding Iran's stockpiles of 450 kilos of highly enriched uranium. That is a quantity liable to allow the production of around 10 nuclear explosive devices. Moreover, Iran has developed a ballistic program which is of Herculean proportions. Thousands of ballistic missiles and tens of thousands of drones have been produced and continue to be produced, and they are widely used as we speak against countries in the region. Iran's strikes against its neighbors bear witness to a threat for the region and for the world. Iran has not seized the opportunities that it has received to achieve a diplomatic solution on this matter, in spite of efforts made by France and its E3 partners. Allow me in this connection to recall a number of facts and to look back at the past somewhat. In October 2023, the Ministers of Foreign Affairs from France, Germany, and the UK met in Tehran following the discovery of an Iranian nuclear program which was clandestine in nature. They met to find a solution, a peaceful and diplomatic solution indeed. That was in October 2003. It was largely thanks to the initiative of the E3, the US, China, and Russia that the JCPOA was concluded in July 2015. And in 2019, the Iranian people were the ones who refused, and I insist on emphasizing that word, refused, rejected the mechanisms proposed by the Europeans. And then we saw the American withdrawal from the agreement. That was what came to pass. We never violated our obligations. Iran rejected the system that was offered to them by the Europeans to continue the implementation of that agreement. Since then, Iran has violated its obligations on a massive scale. These 450 kilos of uranium enriched to 60% bear witness to that fact. Iran says it doesn't want to develop a nuclear weapon. Okay, but when deeds contradict words, is it the words that count or the deeds? Today's strikes against neighbors in the region give us the answer we're looking for. Iran says, and said again yesterday, that it is not attacking its neighbors, but is only targeting military facilities. Facts on the ground prove the contrary. However, France remains convinced of the relevance of diplomacy, and we demonstrated that very fact during the sessions of talks in Geneva in 2024 and 2025 alongside its European partners. Against that backdrop, last year France and its E3 partners had no other option but to activate the process to reinstate Security Council sanctions. The snapback resolutions on the Iranian nuclear and ballistic missiles program were reimposed, and they stipulate in particular that Iran must halt its uranium enrichment activities, resume cooperation with the IAEA, and cease its ballistic programs. It is now incumbent upon member states to implement these resolutions in accordance with Article 25 of the Charter. We call upon member states to support the work of the 1737 committee, a committee that was reinstated to monitor the implementation of these resolutions. We note satisfaction that the committee has resumed the implementation of its exemption mechanisms. Mr. President, the reinstatement of sanctions is quite clearly not an end in itself. It is a peaceful tool aiming to ensure the cessation of Iran's destabilizing activities. The implementation of the reinstated resolutions must consequently act as a lever to encourage Iran to return to serious negotiations. France, alongside its partners, remains ready and willing to participate in efforts to find a robust, verifiable, and lasting agreement, one which will allow the resolution of issues regarding the Iranian nuclear and ballistic programs and its role at a regional level. Thank you.
I thank the representative of France and now give the floor to the representative of Pakistan.
Thank you, President. It is evident that the Council remains divided on the 1737 committee issue. Unfortunately, this split is also preventing agreement on the appointment of chairs of the subsidiary bodies, greatly impacting their work. We are of the view that matters related to 1737 committee must not be allowed to impede the routine work of the Council and its subsidiary bodies. We also note the lack of agreement on the report on this matter that should have formed the basis of today's meeting. President, the development since last June, as well as the ongoing situation that started with the unprovoked and unwarranted attacks on Iran, have deeply impacted the context of the Iranian nuclear file. Regrettably, the breakdown of diplomacy on the Iranian nuclear issue has further complicated an already complex matter that has been on a downward slide for the last few months. However, what has not changed is the continued validity of the fundamental principles and the multilateral spirit that led to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action and the consensus adoption of Resolution 2231 in 2015. More than ever, and even during the current conflict and heightened tensions, it is clear that an enduring solution lies in embracing those time-tested principles rather than abandoning them for short-sighted policies. The JCPOA was a unique instrument, manifestation of an approach based on dialogue, diplomacy, and pragmatism. It was the outcome of painstaking and arduous yet constructive negotiations. It charted a roadmap to comprehensively address the concerns of all parties based on reciprocal actions and thus embodying peaceful resolution of disputes that is at the heart of the UN Charter. Pakistan lent its support to the negotiated settlement of the issue, and it remains our core position till today. It was also in that vein that Pakistan supported the draft resolution that was presented last September to effect a 6-month technical extension of Resolution 2231 in order to provide time for diplomatic engagement. We also supported the presidential draft resolution that provided for the continuation of the termination of sanctions in accordance with the terms of Resolution 2231. President, it is clear that dialogue, diplomacy, and constructive engagement remain the only viable way forward. And yet, diplomacy has been forfeited in favor of military means. Pakistan has expressed its clear position on these developments in this chamber and elsewhere. We have condemned all use of force, targeting of civilian infrastructure, and strikes on nuclear sites under IAEA safeguards. Strikes against nuclear facilities carry huge environmental and safety risks for the population and people all around the region. IAEA's crucial verification mandate should not be disrupted. The IAEA is the institution responsible for verifying compliance with respective nuclear safeguards obligations of member states in an objective, impartial, and credible manner and on technical grounds. The IAEA should be enabled to fulfill this statutory function, and its verification activities in Iran should resume unimpeded. President, we reaffirm our support for the resolution of the Iran nuclear issue through peaceful means. Diplomacy and dialogue should be the guiding principles for achieving a negotiated settlement of all contentious issues in accordance with the rights, obligations, and responsibilities of the parties concerned. Only an objective, fair, and rules-based discussion can advance that objective. We call for an immediate cessation of hostilities in the Middle East and urge all parties to show a maximum restraint, avoid further escalation, and institute a permanent ceasefire and resume dialogue. All of Pakistan's efforts are aimed in that direction. In July last year, this Council unanimously adopted Resolution 2788 that highlighted the primacy of resolving all disputes through peaceful means. We must urgently revive the spirit of the Charter and of that resolution to overcome the current spiral of escalation and stop this deadly cycle that has tragically visited the region so often in recent times. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Pakistan for the statement and now give the floor to the representative of the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Madame la Présidente,
Madam President, the Democratic Republic of the Congo has been following very closely the situation surrounding the work of the 1737 Committee tasked with overseeing the sanctions linked to the Iranian nuclear program. Aside from all other considerations, we would like to insist on the following points. 1. The DRC reiterates its commitment to the fundamental principles of the United Nations, in particular the peaceful settlement of disputes, respect for international law, and the promotion of dialogue between states. On this note, my delegation underscores the importance of cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency, with a view to guaranteeing transparency and trust in the use of nuclear energy for peaceful purposes. 2. The DRC believes that nuclear non-proliferation is an essential pillar of our collective security. Nonetheless, we equally believe that any measure adopted by the Security Council must go hand in hand with sustained diplomatic efforts so as to promote a negotiated, lasting, and mutually acceptable solution. 3. In this spirit, the DRC encourages all of the parties involved to continue constructive dialogue as well as to fully uphold their international obligations. Diplomacy and international cooperation remains the most effective path for resolving tensions and preventing any escalation. By way of conclusion, my delegation would like to recall that the responsibility of the Council in pursuing the noble objectives of our organization, in particular the maintenance of international peace and security, compel us to overcome our differences so as to facilitate the Security Council's subsidiary bodies smoothly conducting Security Council activities. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the Democratic Republic of the Congo and now give the floor to the representative of Somalia.
Thank you, Madam President. Somalia reaffirms its commitment to the non-proliferation weapons of mass destruction. We take note of the divergent views among Council members regarding 1737. My delegation believes a balanced approach that addresses the concerns of all parties is essential in resolving current challenges. We underscore the primacy of the United Nations Charter and international law and encourage constructive, good faith engagement to preserve the Council's unity. Madam President, regarding Iran's nuclear issue, we urge a return to the negotiation table to resolve the non-proliferation issues. We believe the only viable path forward is a swift recommitment to the talks on non-proliferation in line with relevant international resolutions. Somalia recognizes the indispensable role that the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, verification and monitoring activities play in ensuring nuclear safety and global stability. We further acknowledge the critical role that the IAEA plays in safeguarding Iran's enriched uranium, including the clarification of information about nuclear materials at several locations. We reiterate our call for the establishment of a Middle East zone free of nuclear weapons and for all region states to join the Treaty on Non-Proliferation of Weapons without exception. Madam President, turning to the work of the subsidiary body organs, we express our deep concern regarding the Council's continued inability to reach a timely consensus on the appointment of chairs and vice chairs for the third consecutive month. The current deadlock follows the unprecedented delay in the appointment of chairs in 2025, the longest in the Council's history. We urge all delegations to show flexibility and a spirit of compromise so that the vital work of these subsidiary bodies can proceed without delay. To conclude, Madam President, the challenges before us demand a collective, measured response rooted in dialogue, mutual respect, and renewed commitment to multilateralism. Somalia stands ready to engage constructively with all Council members. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Somalia for the statement and now give the floor to the representative of Liberia.
President, today Liberia voted to adopt the agenda to discuss this issue because we believe the UN Charter and the binding language of Resolution 2231 require us to do so. Article 25 obligates all member states to implement Security Council decisions as written. In August 2025, a formal notification of significant non-performance under the JCPOA was submitted. The Council did not adopt a resolution within the 30-day period mandated by Resolution 2231 to continue sanctions relief. Under its explicit terms, the previous resolutions, including 1737, therefore resumed automatically. The IAEA report has documented significant levels of enrichment and stockpiles far beyond the JCPOA limits, providing credible, factual grounds for the notification that activated the snapback mechanism. Liberia's vote reflects no political alignment. It reflects fidelity to the Charter, the Council's own decisions, and the integrity of the non-proliferation regime. And I thank you.
I thank the representative of Liberia for the statement. And there are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. The meeting is adjourned.